thought to have been, there was only one built, and it's thought to have been lost to the world, but it exists, it's being restored, it's in a very safe place, and will continue to be.
And that
it was actually, yeah, it was with this microscope. I think the next slide after the one of the photograph of the banquet, the next couple of slides after that, he actually had his function generator. He actually, in this picture, he's removing breast tissue.
I'll go back to that.
He was removing that, and he would isolate the virus that was within it. He would inject that virus into a mouse and would grow the same type of breast tumor. This breast tumor was removed from a human, and they would inject it, biopsy the mouse, again isolate the virus, re-inject it, and produce the same type of tumor. And they did over and over and over again. So that, and he identified these as the BX and BY virus, and identified frequencies. In the next photo, you will see that microscope with the plasma tube almost right above, it's on his back, but it's almost right above the microscope. All that contraption on the back where he is standing is a function generator, what we now can hold in our hand. But in that day, and this is in the 20s and 30s, in that day, it took that much electronics to do what we can do now today in our hand.
Wow, that's
with far more accuracy.
Yeah, and if you think about when Rife was working, there were even no radio stations, right? I mean,
they were. The FCC did not exist. There were radio stations, but they were a very primitive AM station.
Now, there's something down here to the left called mortal oscillatory rate, and if I missed you saying that, I just wanted to make it a little clearer. I find this hard to understand the first 3 times I heard it, but what does that word mean?
Okay, each organism has a rate that they will oscillate at. Let's just say a black pharisma has a frequency of 780, actually I think it's 830 something. So let's just say it's 830 hertz. You apply an emitter that's emitting 830 hertz, and it will start, because it matches, the wavelength matches, it will start absorbing that energy and continue to absorb that energy, much the same way you would blow up a balloon. I don't know if you're going to be able to show it.
No, it doesn't look like I'll be able to show it.
I don't think we'll be able to show video.
But basically, on that one, it blows up like a balloon. That's very interesting.
Yeah, it basically absorbs the energy, and it loses structural integrity and comes apart. The next one they show is one that people may often have seen. The next slide.
Hold on just a second, sorry. There we go. Yes, the next slide. Yes, that's the one we show here in the office, and it lights up like a balloon and just starts falling apart.
Yeah, and these are done on a dark field microscope. The plasma tube, I believe, was about 8 feet away.
So you can judge a mortal oscillatory rate of a virus or a cancer or a Lyme bug, and we can figure out what the rate is, the vibration is that will actually destroy it. Is that correct? I mean, in general?
That's the whole point of the technology, is to try to get to that point where that happens. In the case of destructive technology, when you have a target that you want to destroy.
Yeah, I'm just going here. There we go. Observation and destruction, yeah.
And that's how he just retune it until he found the frequency of what he was working with, and then that's what he marked down. And fortunately, most pathogens are very much alike. So Candida is Candida, and E. coli is E. coli, until it morphs into something else. That's why we will often have, even though it may the protocol may say E. coli, it may be for more than one form, or whatever it morphs into.
Isn't that kind of the hardest part of the treatment, trying to figure out where it morphs to? So
That's where the hard work, the work that we just can't get done in the United States. You would think that's what we would want to do, and is identify these frequencies. But once you identify these frequencies, then the need for pharmaceuticals goes away. And quite frankly, the pharmaceutical industry runs the show for the most part. So it isn't going to happen in the United States.
Right. And so we basically can observe these things falling apart, and it's a very important part of our treatment because, and I think all of you all could see the fact that if we have detox and cleanse and open up the channels and clear the channels, that it's really important to do a lot of that work while you're also working with the mortal oscillatory rate, so you'll have a way to exit the debris from this treatment. Jimmy, why don't we go on to just look at your equipment, because I think it is, because I think, I just don't want to, we see the history, people can read about that, and I just want them to know about you. You know where this starts, and this is
our equipment basically falls into two different categories: the contact device and the plasma devices, and they both have their pros and cons. The smaller units are quite effective. The plasma is very effective for what it's supposed to be doing. There's times when you don't need the expensive equipment. Oftentimes people want the expensive equipment. And I will give you, for example, if I had Lyme, I might want the smaller device. But we've seen very, very few times is it only one member within the family that has the Lyme. Eventually it seems like the entire family gets Lyme. In which case, rather than have each person tethered at different times of day to the small device, the large device runs and basically gets everyone at once.
Now, however, I've had two interesting uses, but in kids with autism, when you put the pads on them, they're pretty active. So in a couple of those cases, we went ahead and did this nice tube device down here and we put it over their bed at night and actually treat them while they're asleep.
Yeah. So the kids and animals don't necessarily do too well with attached electrodes.
Right. Here's the next slide. Device categories, you've already done that.
Yeah, the contact, radiant, and then the professional units are the hybrid. Then we have various specialty and custom accessories. Some of which we don't sell. We just tell you how to make them or utilize something, improvise something that will work in your use.
We've made a modular unit out of it, and you and I consult with this, and Kim and another number of people do, and what we have is this nice central frequency generator, but then we can add a lot of things to it, can't we? A lot of ways to treat it.
Yes, the function generator itself, the PFG2s, it's utilized by itself with electrode pads, but it also has the output to drive plasma device. The plasma devices have to have a function generator to know what frequencies to operate at, and they either have a function generator built in them or they use the external function generator. And so it's a modular type thing, and each of our things can be basically added, manipulated around, upgraded at virtually any time. That's why you don't see any of our devices out there for sale. They just don't come back.
Hey, I've got a quick question online here. With all these things in front of you, Scott's asking, have you seen any difference? What's the clinical outcome difference? Now, you're not a clinician,
construction, the LED device was actually made more for pets when a plasma device just couldn't be justified, afforded or justified. But it allowed a way to at least give some radiant effect to something, the device, to an animal or a child that could not handle contact. I'm sorry, I forgot the question.
Just the difference between plasma, LED, and contact,
Okay.
and you know, there's you know, you just go ahead and answer it from what you've heard when people call you back. So,
When it comes to Lyme, Lyme is one of these creatures that it'll literally bore down into your phone and to hide. And plasma is something that probably penetrates better than anything else. Basically, your body doesn't become an obstacle to it. The contact is going to follow paths of least resistance, typically through the blood or the meridian system of the body. The utilization of acupuncture, knowledge of acupuncture, can be extremely beneficial when delivering via contact method. Or for that matter, if you're targeting via light exposure, that possibly has really good effects.
I think I'll add to that if you want me to. In kids with autism, Scott, we run a whole, say, what we would call, what Dana calls the six-story roach motel. We go from top to bottom, and we literally run everything every day, from strep to Clostridia because these guys just always regenerate it. It always gets back out of, gets back into the danger zone if you don't treat it. Jacob, our friend that comes in here every day, or 2 times a week, went away for a couple months, and a lot of his symptoms came back because he wasn't being treated daily for strep, for staph, or any of these things. So I thought it was pretty interesting to watch that happen in person. But somebody with prostate cancer may need just the simple one, to put on their knees and make this perfect arc in the middle. So I think it's a clinician decision. I think they all work about the same, don't you, Jimmy? If you
okay, well, when you're targeting something, such as a particular wanting to focus on a particular area, that's when I like if I had prostate cancer, the contact device is what I would be using. If I had breast cancer, the contact device is what I'd be using. If I had leukemia, I would probably be using everything, including the contact plasma, the works.
And one thing you didn't mention down here was the silver maker. Teach us a little about your silver versus somebody who just drinks silver all the time from the store.
Well, the stuff, most of the stuff that's out there, I actually when I started got into the colloidal silver research, not looking to make colloidal silver. I was looking to make an imprintable media. We'll get back to that in a minute. But when I started going out there, and I talked to several of the manufacturers, and from a technical perspective, I was absolutely horrified at the terrible knowledge, the lack of knowledge, the lack of, I just wanted to scream. And how could you possibly do that? But I was horrified, and of course a lot of the samples that we had were just absolutely terrible. And going out there and looking at how people were doing it, and the way people were manufacturing it, using a laser pointer to point at to look to see the silver particles in the solution. Well, I thought that was great until I really did deep down research and realized if you can see the silver particles, they're way too big. And in fact, using a laser, it should not you should not see any reflection, because if it is, we want the silver particles to be smaller than the wavelength of light in that visible spectrum. So when I finally got down to it, we were having our silver work done in a lab over in Romania. I sent Daniel over there for a month, and he worked with one of the colloidal silver labs there in Romania. Colloidal silver products like in shampoos, body washes, facial products, colloidal silver is a normally added ingredient because of its antiseptic effects. The silver particles, when they're small enough, and when I say small enough where you cannot see with a laser pointer, they will attach to the surface of the pathogen. Bacteria, most pathogens, and even most the one-cell parasites within the human body all have a particular enzyme on their cell wall, on their cell membrane, which is used for respiration. We don't have that on any of our cells, but the silver will, if the particles are small enough, will attach to that receptor and literally suffocate the organism within 5 minutes. And that's why,
Jimmy, if you'll slow down. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish that one.
And that's why it's considered an excellent natural antibiotic. It literally kills on contact almost.
But even further than that, as you've created a program where you've used 99% silver at the highest level, creating the smallest molecule, and you can imprint frequencies to those molecules that will not only kill an organism, but kill specific organisms. You know,
yes,
printed frequencies.
Like I say, we weren't really looking for that. I was looking for a media in which to do this imprinting, such as we go back to the dogs and kids that won't sit still for electrode pads. Well, that same output that you see there in the picture is what we use to imprint the colloidal silver. It uses the same silver rods. By the way, it's 99.99, sometimes 99.999. It's the finest grade silver you can possibly buy. But anyway, using a script, one of the same scripts that we might have used to go for candida, for instance, we will use those same frequencies and resonate the water, and it becomes almost like a I say almost. It probably becomes a homeopathic, and that ringing, so to speak, it's almost like ringing a bell, except you ring it very, very well, and those frequencies can be drunk without problems. Also, the horror stories and the bad things that you hear about colloidal silver, typically largely put out by quackbusters, is not the colloidal silver that we're really talking about. This is the bad stuff that you hear about people using. They've added salt to allow it to make silver. It's not really colloidal silver. It's really a silver chloride or silver nitrate, which is the same thing they used to make photographic paper out of when turned on. It's photoreactive. You don't worry about that for this if it's done right.
Right. There's a question from Elizabeth that how much colloidal silver is safe to drink a day, and well, in this case, I think Jimmy just made it clear, there are some great colloidal silvers that are retail, but they're still just at 68%. There are people who claim to have a detoxification issue, Elizabeth. Silver in general, at higher quality silvers that have been proved out, are probably reasonably safe. But, there are people who don't want to put metals in their body. In this case, I think Jimmy has described the molecules as being so small and so useful to the body that the waste product does not stay in the body in general.
atoms of, well, one, they come off in chunks, I say relative chunks, X number of, 15 to 30 atoms, it's a large chunk. But when you have the smaller chunks, they can literally are small enough that they can, when you have 2 and 3 atoms, and they can flow in and out of the ion channels of the cell. They don't get stuck. The poor quality stuff has a very poor charge to it, and they aggregate, they collect, and they form bigger clumps, and sometimes those bigger clumps are occur once they've gotten inside a cell, and they're trapped inside of that cell from that point on. That does not seem to occur with the type of stuff we are doing. We've never had any problems with any amount. I would not hesitate to drink 8 ounces of it at all.
I actually have. It was very interesting. I drank 8 ounces a day for a week to see what would it do, and it was a pretty good experience. Why don't we move on now to the plasma, because I don't want to miss the details on the plasma. I think it's one of the most elegant plasma. Would you tell them what a plasma is? I think your story about a plasma, keep it down to 60 seconds or so.
Okay, when we were taught in school about plasma, about the states of matter, solid, liquid, gas, they lied to us. There was another state after that, the plasma state. And the aurora borealis is an example where the sun, the high energy particles hit the stuff and take it up to the next state. To fall back to the gas state, it has to give off some of that energy. It does so in photons of light. And I can now probably take that in. Can you put it on the one that has the light switch on it? It's right before the aurora borealis thing.
Okay, you'll have to guide me through it here.
That's around 68, 69.
Okay, I'll just put in number 68.
My numbers are a little bit different than yours. I've got more slides.
Is it that one?
Nope, it's about 10 back. 10 before that.
Okay, let's go to 58 then.
It's probably right after that one right there. There we go.
Oh, sorry, I did that.
Okay, well, you know where to do stuff.
Great. Yep.
The emission from plasma, I know every one of us has known flipped on a light switch and heard a pop on the radio. I don't know of any person that hasn't noticed that. When you flip that switch, the two contacts coming together, there's a spark that occurs. Well, that spark is actually a plasma. And that emission that occurs is actually heard on the radio. It actually is able to receive that emission. Now, flipping that switch is kind of like what we're doing. We're just doing it 140,000 times a second, or as fast as that. And so that energy that was going out to the radio, we're actually sending it out by that light is not really, the light that you see as a plasma light is not really on solid. We're literally turning it on and off that fast. And that energy that's being emitted is the energy that's going out to the people or the animals or whatever the test subject or target is. But the frequency of what we're doing it is, the wavelength, is what is supposed to be allowing it to match up with the particular target pathogen. Tesla, Tesla was almost obsessed with the wireless delivery of power. It was probably what his downfall was when his financiers found out what he was doing. He was literally he was trying to transmit power out to the various factories and homes wirelessly and freely. That was the key. And his fine answers are, where do you put the meter when you don't? You give the power away. Well, that wasn't what they wanted to hear. But if you look at that diagram, what we're actually doing, this is one of my older systems here, we're basically doing the same thing, but we're just transmitting it out to the cells at a microscopic level so that those cells get energized. Now, we've talked about destruction before, but many things, probably 90% of the things, have more to do with the with positive natures and supplemental, reconstruction, supplementation, and energizing the cells, because there's a lot of things that go on that are very positive when those things are occurring. And
one of the things that drew me to this system is that, as you started talking about, you told me about a study in Japan where literally either the silver molecule or the plasma delivery of the frequency literally sits outside the DNA and can reconstruct DNA. And there was this thing called the Ciba-Geigy effect. You can kind of look that up as well.
So that's very interesting. Taking things back to a much more virile time.
But with these folks that have Lyme disease and autism, what I believe has happened is they really have the destruction of part of their brainstem through the inflammation and disease. And what drew me to this biophotonic medicine is, unless we restore that area of their brain, I don't see how they can ever get totally modulated so they can defend themselves against their
so that's one of the things. If we go back to that light switch analogy, there's energy being transmitted out. The pH of the body is extremely important. I mean, I know it doesn't even seem related. We talk about acid and alkaline, but the low pH is associated with an absence of electrons. Well, we've actually transmitted those electrons out to the cells and the intracellular matrix. A lot of the pain and stuff that's involves a lack of communication. I think Steve mentioned that the other night, although he probably went over it really quick. But the fact of the matter is even without any contact, we're literally changing the stuff, causing the cellular matrix to become more alkaline, which pathogens don't like to live in an alkaline environment. Swelling does not occur in an alkaline environment. When there's pain and swelling, that's more acidic. Also, getting the intercellular communication going. Actually, there was a slide. It's actually one of Steve's slides, but it showed the intercellular communication and any type of trauma, which includes swelling. Trauma can be occurred chemically, such as in the brainstem. But you start bringing these voltage levels up, that swelling is going to go down. Sometimes you can actually watch. I've heard it over and over again from folks. They will put the electrodes, for instance, near something and can actually watch the swelling go down.
I have a question. We don't want to get lost on this equipment a little bit. I have a question about, on the plasma device, there's gas in that little tube. People are asking, well, what are those gases? And I heard you use the word noble gas.
Yes, noble gases, those are gases that mix with absolutely nothing. They're inert elements, but they are, if you look on the periodic table, they are all the ones down on the end. They have unique characteristics in that they can be excited between the states of matter very quickly. or even if you wanted to, it wouldn't be a problem. With one exception, one of them is radon. We don't use radon.
So you use...
because it's radioactive.
Yes, it's radioactive. And what does this do? Does this help transmit the frequency to a more clarified level, or?
No, it allows us to make that spark. In the light switch analogy, it allows us to make that spark almost so fast, it's almost like it's a constant flow of energy.
So literally, that constant flow of energy, when you say it, the light switch turns off in your machine up to 150,000 times a second.
Yeah, in actuality, in the lab, I've been able to do it almost 250,000 times per second.
And
switch back and forth between those states.
Well, that's pretty exciting. And, you know, I think just to recap here, because we don't want to get too far and take too much of your time tonight, we've got what you have done, I think, is through trial and error and through your knowledge of electronics. I think you've built the single best unit on the market right now, capable of beyond the old thinking that we used to do. The kind of waves that are in this are even a kind of a new thought. Is this somebody's asking, is this a scalar wave technology?
Yes, it is. And actually, there's so many misrepresentations of the word scalar out there that that's another thing that just makes me want to scream. Because I will hear people talk about scalar waves, and then they start talking about the scales of the piano or in music, and that's not what that's about. It's a longitudinal wave, which the best way is that jump rope is a jump rope analogy I use, and that you have you have three kids, one kid at each end of a jump rope, and another standing way off at the side. A person snakes the rope up and down on one end, and you see this wave move from one end of the rope to the other. It has a period of time between the pitches. It takes time for it to go to one end of the rope to the other, and it diminishes in amplitude as it goes from one end of the rope to the other. And our kid that's standing off at the side that represents all of our scientific instruments, that's exactly what he sees. And what we just described here, that's how light works, that's how radio waves work. It's basically, the way we've been taught in school. If you had a volleyball net in the middle of it, the largest wave that could get through there is the size of the hole in the net. So everything we've talked about there is conventional. Now let's take that same setup, and you have that rope is a rigid pole, and the person that was snaking it up and down is not kind of like pushing and pulling on that rope, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Well, everything he does is happening at exactly the same instant on the other end. The amount of the amplitude, if he puts 5 pounds of pressure or 5 pounds of pull or 1,000 pounds, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, it's exactly the same on the other end. And it doesn't matter if that rope is 5 feet long or 50,000 miles long. It's still happening at exactly, there's no loss. Everything is happening exactly the same on the other end. Now, our guy out there at the side that represents our instruments, he sees absolutely nothing going on. And that is the problem that we oftentimes have in talking about these waves, is because it is very difficult to really work with that type of wave and describe it in normal conventional terms. But that's what the plasmas are evidently unique in their ability, not unique, but they have been suspected of being one of the things that actually causes the coupling in a generation of these type of waves.
we go ahead and let people ask questions?
Okay.
So, Aaron, why don't you bring them up? It's 9 o'clock, and they want to ask questions for about 15 minutes. We'll be glad to do that.
Okay, if you have a question, hit *1.
Hello, it's Elizabeth, and I'm just wondering how often the PFG, how often would you use that a month for Lyme disease?
I would be using it every day, probably twice a day.
Oh my goodness, really? Even though?
Oh, yes.
Okay, and it's the 2 hour, like over a 2 hour period it takes.
Yeah, well, it depends on what the protocol is, but I would still be using it quite a bit. And the reason being is you don't want to give the thing a chance to mutate to something else where the frequencies that you've been giving it become ineffective. You want to sort of like kick it. Well, once you knock it down, you want to keep kicking it so that it can't possibly ever get up again.
Oh wow, really?
And probably in the case of cancer, this is something that oftentimes come up is a person gets better and then they stop using the device, and that's really the absolute. They're not really cured at that point. They cannot let up until it's absolutely gone, and that's where many people make a mistake. And it's the same thing with that with Lyme. Is you don't want to let up. You don't want to give any breaks in the protocol. It's not, Lyme is one of the things. Now, if it was something like cold or flu, that would be different. You could use it. Cold and flus usually get knocked out pretty quick.
There's also the hurt, that you feel after.
Yes.
So you need to give that a couple days, though, right? To let.
No, well, yeah, but there's several things that can be done. A lot of the practitioners have been kind of recommending you. Well, one, you need to drink lots of water while you're doing it. That's what I do.
Okay.
But then at the same time, there's also things like the addition of activated charcoal. Can help clean that stuff out of you real quick.
And from our lessons last night, we know that we need those pathways open, so I would be using drainage remedies homeopathically. Also, Jim, lymph 1, lymph 2, lymph 3, liver, and gallbladder, I would want all those pathways to continue to be clear if we were doing it every day. Another thing, though, Jimmy, is you always taught me to use those health frequencies, not
I was just going to say the support protocol. It actually, after the regular protocol is done, the support protocol, which is actually a stimulation of the liver and kidneys to help get that stuff run through you and out of your system, so that you don't have the Herxenheimer reaction. And that's, most people have our equipment. That's the one protocol that we put on as an example, so to speak, because there's hardly any time that you don't use that. If you're going after any type of pathogen, you need to run that to help get it out of the system. Even if you've done a little or a lot, that can help completely eliminate the Herxenheimer reaction itself.
Oh, that's great. Okay. And on a protocol like that, do you know about how long it would take for someone's neurological Lyme?
No, but I can't remember what the length of it is. It's by 30, 40, 45 minutes. But that can be adjusted.
You talked about recovery.
Yeah.
I have one case in Austin, Texas, and in a kid that I can tell you that in 6 months of using it, his speech went from 2 words to 7 words. He became more athletic. Once he stopped using it, he kind of lost that tone. But the fact is, he had neuroborreliosis. It took 6 months probably for him to get to the right place. So I would probably lay my program out a minimum at 3 months at a time.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, one last question. Can we program the colloidal silver specifically for the Lyme?
Yes.
don't have to use it right then. Then later you can go ahead and throw any protocol you want on it. You only need about 60 seconds for each of the frequencies that you're going to dump onto it.
It still takes a couple of hours to do, so the bottom line is it does take a couple of hours, but then you have basically your resonant light therapy in a bottle.
Wonderful. Okay. Great. Thank you so much.
Sure thing.
Hi, Jimmy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi there. I have a couple questions, and I may ask another one if a few of my group don't speak up here. But I have an individual I'm seeing with advanced peripheral neuropathy. I suspect lying. He hasn't taken his hasn't had the Western blot done yet. Nerve regeneration. He has demyelination that has occurred. What about restoring some of the tissue that's been so damaged? Is it possible with the plasma or the PFD?
Actually, yes, and I will get Michael. There's a paper that NASA did. The frequency is actually around 9 hertz. They actually did nerve regeneration at NASA, and I've got the paper that was done, and it is. I believe Steve referred to it Monday night, but I've got the paper, and I'll see that anybody that wants it gets it.
Yes, please. I really need it. And then my second question is, some of my group members are concerned about silver accumulation in the body. Where does the silver go? Is it excreted? Is there any accumulation that's going to cause?
With ours, it should not be a problem. With some of the other stuff, some of the products that are available, and some of the silvers that are made using a different method, the typical method, it can be because the silver particles aggregate. That's what I was talking about earlier. They start clumping together, and the clumping together is an electrical problem.
I will reiterate, if you have lymphatic pathways and liver drainage starting from a homotoxicology standpoint opened up, it becomes a minimal issue.
Okay, very good. And I also have...
The type of stuff we're making, it just really isn't a problem. But it is an issue if you're going and buying some of the products out there, or making some of the products such as using DC, like batteries. Some of that stuff is just absolutely terrible.
Okay, thank you. And I may come back on if any other questions don't get answered here. Okay.
Sure thing.
Oh, Jimmy?
Yes.
Yeah, I missed the very first part of the very first question. I think you had something to say about how long you'd have to spend on a PFD day. Was it like 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening?
Well, it depends. That's going to vary a lot from person to person. Each person is going to find that they can tolerate. You can have two people with the same disease, but they're going to have different levels of issues, and even their diet can make a difference on how conductive they are. So you can't compare. You can't say X number of minutes for one person and X number of minutes for another, even though they have the same problem and even the same diet. There's so many variables in there. You can't say for sure. But the thing is you want to do it, and I typically do stuff until I start to feel bad. Or start to get the Hertzheimer reaction. But you should never do it until you just feel lousy. I typically, when I feel the toxin level coming up enough to give me, just a slight dull headache, that's when I stop. And I drink plenty of water, and I'm fine, and I can go out on my way. I can come back and do some of it later. And our software is made so that you can stop in the middle of the thing and pick back up later.
And then the other question I had is, what rate of success, or percent of success do you see with people who use it? And what causes failures? Why I hear some people completely cured, some aren't. What determines who's and what isn't? And
Well, I can't. Being a manufacturer, I can't legally make any claims, but my observations have been that the people that are working with practitioners are by far and away come out on top. They have, for the most part, very good results. And because the practitioner, like I mentioned earlier, can oftentimes spot the deficiencies that are needed and recognize the problems that the end user wouldn't have necessarily recognized. And I put myself into that same category because that's I'm fortunate to work with quite a few doctors. But the fact of the matter is recognizing a lot of these supplemental issues and addressing it as you're going along is just critical. If a person takes the stuff and just uses it as if it were a magic box, and putting all the responsibility on the magic box, that person's probably not going to have the best of success. They're probably going to have some results, but they're not going to probably do as good as they could be doing.
So, Carl, that's where the Zyto comes in very handy because it can help you pick where you should be heading and how to use it.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that I wanted to address. I'm actually supposed to address that next week in a meeting. But many of the practitioners that we've been working with use the Zyto, and they go in on every week or 2 weeks or month or whatever the case might be for their particular issue, and they get readjusted, and the Zyto is able to produce numbers that are also supplemental to the protocol that the person is actually using. And it allows the evolution and the continued development of the person's protocol that they're using on the plasma or the contact device, either one. And that, what I'm saying, just the action that they're going in, the practitioner is recognizing those changes that have occurred, even if the end user did not recognize it.
Jim, I'd like to add a little bit there and just say, I think you've been on the phone calls from Monday to now, and you can go back and listen to some of those at some point. And just the reason we put it on this way was to say that the light this plasma light or the contact piece is exceptionally wonderful, but in order for you to get the maximum results, remineralization, clearing the channels, supporting organs, and that sort of thing, applying true physiological regulating principles to your body before or during the time that you're using the light becomes of utmost importance.
Absolutely. I wish I could have said that eloquently.
Okay, next caller, or did you get everything answered, sir?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
That was a good question.
What?
Hello, this is Martin Carla, and I'm envisioning the colloidal silver being the media that the frequencies are written onto. My question is there's multiple frequencies that are written on at one particular time, and I'm wondering how does that not overwrite the frequency you just put into it? I don't think it actually doesn't do it at the same time, and I don't think, and because there's probably circulation in there, I don't think it's doing all of it. I think it's picking up some of it, and we have the past, you don't do a whole session. You limit the number of frequencies to 4 or 5 that you may use. We actually have done as many as the entire organ support session, but I oftentimes just do one. I thought at first of just doing 1 or 2 frequencies. That's a good question, but we have found that doing a large number of frequencies has not made a difference, and it has seemed to be very effective. And I will give you an example. The twins that work for me, the twin engineering students that work for me, they have a dog that was 14 or so years old. It was a large breed dog. It was half Saint Bernard, half Great Dane. So it was pretty, it had already lived out its whole life, was already on borrowed time. It was having a lot of trouble, and the family they were pretty sure they were going to have it euthanized that week. And they had already been to the vet, and the vet had already told them, yeah, that's what was going to have to be done. And not knowing that they weren't going to lose anything, they had nothing to lose in the process. They made up a single batch of a double batch of the colloidal silver, imprinted only with the organ support frequencies. But that has an energetic frequency in it also that is stimulating across the board. But anyway, they dropped that in its water on Sunday. They were planning on putting the dog to sleep on Monday or Tuesday. They took the stuff out, and Sunday evening they put part of that water in the dog's dish. And over the next couple of days, they added it. The dog was, by Thursday, was out digging, running around in the yard, digging in the garden. And that's been a year and a half ago, and the dog is doing just fine. Has done quite well on his checkups, and the vet made the comment that this dog may have as many as 5 more years left in him. So the large number of frequencies, I can't remember how many frequencies were in that, 30 possibly, evidently we're able to get across. Okay. All right. So that was actually a hopeless situation, and we used a lot of frequencies in that case, and it worked quite well. Okay.
Hey, thank you. I had one more question then too. You had talked about alkalizing the body. Is there a frequency that we actually use to help us do that? I mean,
actually, pH is actually a measure of the available electrons, potential hydrogen, and available electrons. If you go look, it's actually an electrical. I have a bunch of slides on that, but it's too much to get into this evening. But pH is actually an electrical measurement, and it has to do with the number of available electrons, typically from the hydrogen. But the more available electrons are, the lower the pH. The higher the pH, the more alkaline. So as you add make more electrons available, whether you're making them available via contact or whether you're literally transmitting them into the cells via an induction type method, which is not likely what the plasma is doing, it's going to raise that pH.
So Jimmy, could it be true that we don't have Lyme disease at all? We have an electron deficiency.
Well, I was fixing to say those little spirochetes are still there.
They're still there, but have you generated enough pH Jokingly, we call it the electron deficiency disease.
Yeah, so many things just do not like to live in that alkaline environment.
So, give me a little help here, Aaron. Dave, how many more questions do we have?
We have two more questions, but I actually have a question.
Okay.
Okay. And what about grounding? Like when you're doing these frequency therapies, is it important to ground yourself for the room you're in? No, because we're providing I don't think so, because we're actually providing the electrons. Grounding becomes the negative part of the circuit, and that's where the electrons come from. Okay.
Great. Okay, next call.
But grounding is an interesting topic all in itself. Okay.
Yes, caller.
Hi, it's Lisa. I have a little guy that has a lot more stuff going on than the rest of us. But with the plasma machine, if we were running it for 2 hours and it became a little much for him, like would we be able to say, when he went to bed, be able to run the machine without it toppling him? Like, does the plasma go through different rooms, or is the wall going to stop it?
Wall's not going to stop it.
Oh, that's the big problem. Yeah.
Think about that net and that.
The wall doesn't stop it. We do have a funny story here. I mean, the first Christmas we got it about a year and a half ago. We treated 10 people a day down in the other room, and we were all, after 10 hours of doing the plasma, we weren't feeling so well. we were all pretty sick because we were detoxing. Because we were treating Lyme and all those words that you're not allowed to say. But we were treating all those folks, and we noticed at the end of the day we were not feeling well, and so we had to get with Jimmy. We have it pointed outside to the woods at this point. So
okay. So you can.
Yeah, or you could treat your whole family if you'd like.
No, I'm saying that's ideal for me. But what if one starts to fall apart? Like my little one has a lot more stuff, but with the vaccines and everything else. But so if I pointed it away from his room,
the thing is, if you think about it, if there's nothing there for it to resonate with, probably an easier way of saying it, doing it, is to do this quick analogy. If you have a person sitting there with cancer, a person sitting there with HIV, and a person sitting there with malaria, all three of these people have different issues.
Yeah.
You can put all of those frequencies in the machine at one time. Now, of each of those protocols, there are some things in there that are common to all of those. But, for instance, something that was malaria-specific, only the person with malaria would get that. Only the person with HIV would get that. And only the person with cancer would get that. The cancer frequencies would not affect the other two. And if you do think of it such as with a tuning fork and several goblets of water, and you bring a tuning fork that has C on it, only the glass or glasses that resonate with C will ring. The others are totally unaffected.
Well, I'm just worried there's a couple that might ring a little too much, and it would be like, that 10-hour experience that you all had.
And that's where the practitioner comes in, and with our experience with autism, 2,000 kids, 15,000 diagnoses, we really are one of the top practices with autism in the world, really. We do it, I did consults in Tunisia and Brazil today, so the bottom line is here, Lisa, is we're doing some research on what we would call transcranial stimulation, and we're using research from all areas, tuning forks and everywhere else, to try to re-stimulate
my husband would take the hardest hit, but I can only say that right now because he's not here.
That's the way it usually works. Yeah.
Your plants will look great.
But your plants will look great.
Yeah.
I'm a mold house. Like, I don't have too many plants here.
That's okay, but we couldn't keep ours alive when we started treating people here, and they grew like 4 feet.
Are you kidding?
No,
Oh,
not.
yeah, it seems to like, it likes the energy.
I was going to try that with the immunosystem. I knew if I opened the bottle, I would, like, start doing it, and I had to wait to do lab work for something else, and I was like, okay, I'm going to hide it, but I hear, I get it.
We love Immuassist. Okay.
Yeah. Well, we've had a couple, with frequency medicines, we've had a couple blow-ups that have been very eye-opening.
Mm-hmm.
So, so you learn, you kind of learn. Like, sometimes that happens. It happens more with regular medicine. It's just, people think that nothing could, like, what are you going to accomplish with that? And then it's like, oops.
We've used the Immuassist and the frequencies for psoriasis and had a great result. We've used them for interocular migraines and had a great result. And then sometimes we put them in a foot bath, and we look like a KISS concert around here. I have lasers and frequencies going everywhere sometimes, and they're foot-to-foot bath, and it's a pretty amazing thing. And interocular migraines, people walk out of here with no headaches. It's pretty interesting. But the Immuassist is also very interesting. So, okay, well, thank you, Lisa. We have one more caller, and we need to wrap it up.
Is it me? Okay, is it me again?
Who's me?
Me, Kim. Hi.
Oh, hey, Kim, yeah.
Hi. The coil. Any idea when you're going to have your coil prototype I know you're working on? Any idea when that's going to be finished?
It's probably going to be a couple of months. I did some really interesting research this weekend, or this last week. I just got back into town. That's part of what I was doing with Dr. Hallwanger. And we're working on something very, very interesting. They have gotten it much more compact and usable. A little bit larger than I wanted, but yes, we are working on something very interesting.
Okay, I know when to start bugging you about it, so thanks.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, Aaron Payne, is there anything else? Okay, great, everybody. We've had a great week. We really thank you for joining us. Be sure to visit us at LWT International. We would love for you to visit lwtinternational.com/Solimar if you want to see pictures of how we use the devices we use in office. We would also encourage you, if you want to, have us review a neuroemotional piece called, it would be called lwtinternational.com/wellness check. It's a free wellness check, and you would run that and send it to us, and by email at info@lwtinternational.com. So we've had a great week. Started out with Steve, and and then Ron Cook, and then last night it was really excellent, understanding why toxins gather. And tonight we've really seen how we can reach new heights in healing. So I encourage all of you to consider it as a holistic process and use all the pieces at all times, because the toxic ball that we face is bigger than anything that we've ever understood. So I encourage you to